TDS just released the Chapter 1 of Story Mode this week, and there's not a lot to go over as they only released a new revamped tutorial section and 4 levels of Chapter 1. I've noticed some things that I liked and also disliked in this update, so we'll be discussing the good, the bad, and what could mean later on for the game. Before I start, I'd like to say that we are very close to reaching 1k subs on this channel, so if you'd like me to make more videos like this, do consider giving a sub as it would help me out tremendously. That's all I have to say right now, and let's go on with the video. Let's first start off with something simple. We just received a refresh of the matchmaking UI and even the lobby, despite it not being half a year since the recent one we had. While it's a pretty decent change, there's definitely some things I want to criticize. The new lobby is relatively small and simple, but at least it's very well detailed. While it is something that I can appreciate, I do think this is worse than we already had and struggles with the same complaints I've had with the Solar Eclipse variant lobbies and the Hexscape variants as well. My issue is, everything feels way too compact and tight, making it feel somewhat claustrophobic, especially in public lobbies. I really miss having lobbies wherein there's a lot of space to roam around, and I was glad that they fixed this complaint I had on the previous lobby. But it feels like we've downgraded a teeny tiny bit. Anyways, moving on from that, having elevators for each game mode is an interesting approach to an already decent system that all tower defense games have been already using for years now. There's not much to go over with it, but I'm not exactly a big fan. Like, I don't really mind, but like, I'd prefer if we had the original system of elevators, but this is fine. But I do want to point out that I like each of the backgrounds for these modes. I can't really tell if they're drawn or just a 3D render with a black and white color scheme, but like, they're all pretty good. Plus aura, honestly. Also, I do appreciate the colored toy balls around the map. We gotta have more of these kind of stuff in the game in the future, since I just like having silly stuff around the game, you know? So this is a good addition, and I'd like for these to stay even in the future lobbies. Now, let's talk about the matchmaking UI. It's a decent change. I like having all of them compact into a singular UI rather than clicking 3 to 4 buttons to get into a game. It's a minor nitpick, but still glad this was improved upon. I've noticed that the UI looks more like a standardized UI that you'll see in a lot of Roblox games. How do I know this? It's because it's very obvious that they base the UI off of something like Rivals with the placement of certain UIs. It is a bit obvious. If you think that's a negative or a good thing, that's up to you to decide. You can leave a comment down below and tell me what you think. I will be glad to read all the comments. They also added matchmaking for trials, which honestly is such a great addition, and I never understood why they never got around to doing it and made it an exclusive elevator feature. But oh well. Although I do want to point out that the survival mode section could use some work. The Fallen, Frost, and Hardcore renders aren't really positioned properly, and the faces of these bosses are cut out. They definitely should have tweaked the position of these because it is very obvious and it stinks. Additionally, I don't really like how easy mode has a larger interface compared to the other modes. I get what they were trying to do because it's the story mode and such, but I think something like Frost mode would have deserved that spot because of how commonly used that mode is for the overall majority of the player base. The operator rebalance is pretty meh. It didn't really change much other than reverting it back to a 16 tower placement and buffing its early game and coordination range by a minuscule amount. They've also changed share optics to level 5, which I'm a bit mixed on, but I'll probably play around operator a bit more before making a conclusion whether this is a good change or not. If you guys like this change or don't, do leave a comment again on this video as to what you think about the rebalance. That's all that I have to say about it because it is such a very, very minor rebalance, but I also just wanted to point it out. Moving on. Of course, now for the main dish of the update, the story mode. We currently only have 2 chapters, that obviously being tutorial, which is now its own chapter, and chapter 1. But there are still some parts that are still date locked. I'm a bit confused as to why they did this instead of releasing it all into one update. But I assume that's in order to have a bit more content for next week while waiting for Enforcer, as we're now back onto a weekly schedule like back in 2024 and early 2025. There's not much to say, as they haven't given us a lot so far, and I'm hoping that the next update for next week gives us a lot more background on the story, because so far, despite it being a lore-dense section of the game, we haven't really gotten much information about what exactly happened in the lore. Hops is a new character introduced in this mode, and he's pretty dope. We don't really know much about what he's going to provide to the story, but so far, there hasn't been a lot other than adding in extra dialogue within this mode, which is fine, I suppose. This update has confirmed something that I already said before, which is that we, the players, are a new recruit, and it's evident as in all 3 released cutscenes, we play a part in them and is even shown doing stuff in each one. So I really appreciate the devs for confirming this. The interactions between Commander, Sniper, Demo, and Hops is pretty cool and feels a lot like a normal conversation between the towers, and I'd really love to see more of this even outside of story mode. Each level in this update were all pretty easy. You don't really need a fancy setup to beat them, which makes sense as this is obviously balanced to cater towards newer players. I'll assume that future chapters will become more challenging as time goes on, so I'd love to see where it'll go from here. I've seen some people not really like how this update turned out, especially with story mode, as they barely explained anything about what's going on, as the entire update focused on the current events in the mode, which is getting a bunch of survivors and escorting them to safety, and that's mostly what this mode has centered on. I wouldn't say it's a bad thing, but I do get where people are coming from. I can't really formulate an opinion as of the moment, as we are still at the very start of story mode. So it's really hard to get an idea at the moment on how the story is going to go on, and if it's well executed or not. This update is definitely the start of something much bigger, so I don't want to say story mode is going to be good or bad just yet. Although I really hope that they'll get around to discussing more about Dr. Hairshaft and maybe even the Molten, Fallens, and maybe even the Frost Realm. As there's definitely a lot of potential with these factions, and the only real piece of story we have for them are the logbooks or in-game dialogue, which does limit what Kyo, the story writer, can do. So I hope story mode eventually fixes this and bridges the gap between lore inconsistencies, because the current lore of the game is very fragmented due to some information and even events being retconned for the lore, so it does get confusing sometimes. So hopefully this will eventually solve it, but as for now, all that we can do is wait. I won't make any lore analysis towards this mode just yet, as it isn't fully completed. Maybe next week? Not sure, but as of the moment, this is all that I can really give you guys. Thank you for sticking around to watching this video. I really appreciate all the support I've been getting on this channel. It's been a little over a month at this point, and I've went from 71 subs to 839 as of recording, which is something completely unfathomable for some bum-ass artists like me. So I'd like to ask again to please subscribe to my channel and consider leaving a comment as to what you think about this update and what you're expecting for next week's batch of story mode levels. That's all that I have for you guys now. See ya!